today to talk to you about blankets.
Blanket, please.
And specifically blankets that you, and by you, I mean me, might actually finish knitting. I love the idea of knit blankets. The reality of knit blankets, however, is that I took years to knit both of my boys' baby blankets, and I think other than that, I have only ever finished one kind of like throw size blanket. Blankets are just a lot of knitting, and a lot of knitting the same thing over and over again. And unlike, socks, which are small, or sweaters, which have shaping and lots of different things going on, blankets are generally speaking a square or a rectangle with just not a whole lot going on to hold your interest. So last year I did begin to learn to crochet so I could hopefully start crocheting blankets. That's faster. And I have made some decent progress on my crochet blanket, but because it is a new skill to me, it's still very slow. And I am sticking with it, and I am happy with it, and I have some other crochet blankets that are in my queue, and I hope to actually work on one day. But I thought today we would talk about, excuse my voice, I thought today we would talk about knitting patterns for blankets that are more realistic to expect to actually finish. So what does that mean? All right, I'm going to show you 7 blankets. 6 of them are modular blankets. And that means either that you are knitting smaller pieces that are going to come together in a larger piece, or that you are starting from one small piece and knitting on and moving in different directions until you end up with a rectangular blanket. The last one I'm showing you just because it is so cute, and it does involve a newish technique which might hold your interest, but it is knit like all in one piece, just one big swath of knitting. So I'm not sure about the last one, but for starters, the 6 main blankets that I'm going to show you are all modular, so you are not just knitting one giant rectangle, you are doing other things. They are interesting enough to hold your attention, but not so intricate that you need to have a chart or anything else with you. You can still kind of knit these on the fly. So they are pretty much all garter and stockinette stitch, which means they're relatively easy. They are relatively portable because I said you are, for most of them, knitting small pieces that you're going to sew together later. They're very versatile. They generally involve color as opposed to an intricate stitch pattern or cables or charts or things like that. What's really making these stand out is the colors in them, which again is going to keep you interested with like changing colors and things, but is not going to require so much of your concentration that you can't take these projects with you. They are all also worked in, I want to say, worsted. The lightest thing here is a DK. A blanket out of fingering weight yarn? No, I'm never going to finish that. Even if it's a bunch of really cute little pieces that I'm going to sew together, or if it's, I tried doing one of those, like, I don't even remember what they're called. They're like little squares that you knit one and then you knit the next one onto in a fingering weight yarn. No, I think I did like 3 squares. It's never going to happen. We want something on big needles, chunky yarn, the perfect balance of ease and interest, portable. Also, I think there's something to be said for, like, if you're working on a blanket and, it's just one giant rectangle, you're gonna look at it and be like, I'm so far from being done. I'm so far from being done. But if you've just got some squares, especially some of the projects that are larger squares, not these dinky little fingering weight squares, like, oh, this square's almost done. Oh, look, I have accomplished something. So that is what we're going for today. Blankets that people like me who are not necessarily blanket knitters might actually finish. So as I said, I'm going to show you 6 main patterns and then one bonus pattern at the end. So to start with, this one has actually been in my queue for quite a while because I'm not a blanket knitter. This is the Cloudy Day Throw. This is a pattern by Emily Kintai. Not sure how you pronounce that, but of course, all of everything is going to be linked in the description box down below. And so this is from a collection that Knit Picks published a few years ago, their modular blankets collection. It's called Block Party. The actual printed modular blankets book is currently, right now, on clearance for $5. That is a fantastic deal if you are looking for, because there are several cute blankets in there. But as I said, this is part of the Block Party collection, but you can buy the individual pattern on the Knit Picks website as well. So what I like about this is worsted weight. It uses swish worsted. You can obviously use any worsted or Aran or whatever weight yarn that you want. And here we have these garter stitch squares. The squares look like, I'm almost positive they are knit on the bias, which means they are going to hold your interest, but they're not like super involved. Like you don't really have to pay attention. So knitting on the bias, you're basically casting on a 1/4, increasing, decreasing, so that the striping goes diagonally. So it's going to keep you, it's going to hold your interest in that regard, but it's just garter stitch. So it says 4 small squares make up 1 bigger square. 2 small squares are knit and then 2 more are joined to the first 2 as they are worked. And then you've got 1 big square. And then at the end, you're going to join your big squares together and you're going to add a garter stitch border, which is also joined as it's worked. And there's also a pillow pattern included if you were interested in that. Now this is done in a black and white, which I like, very minimalist sort of, but obviously you could do this in any bunch of colors you wanted. And the other thing is, it shows the squares seamed together in this specific way, but you can rotate your squares until you get an interesting geometric shape that you like. This is definitely one that is actually on my list. You could probably, depending on the size of your stash and what you've got going on there, like I said, you need 3 colors. You could probably knit this from stash. Let's see how much you need of each color. You need 13 of your dark gray, 11 of the light gray, 5 of the black. Oh, I guess it uses 4 colors: light gray, dark gray, black, and white. It doesn't say how much of the white it needs because the white is out of stock, which is really not helpful. So again, that is the Cloudy Day Throw, available from Knit Picks. And again, you can get the whole Block Party modular blankets collection print book right now on clearance. So if you think you might like to knit a bunch of these modular blankets in the collection, you want to do that. All right, the next pattern here is sort of in a similar vein. This is the Flyaway Blanket. This is a pattern by Tin Can Knits. So this one is available directly from Ravelry. It is part of a collection or book, I'm not sure which, called Max and Bodie's Wardrobe. You can buy the whole thing for 20 bucks or just the pattern for $6. So this one is in a DK weight. And if you go on the Ravelry pattern page, you can really see just the number of ways they have put different squares together to make this. And they've got some examples there that you can use, lining up. It's basically each square has a stripe of color, sort of close to one end of, like, not necessarily right in the middle, a slightly off center stripe of color. And you line them up to make a series of V's, and you can put them together any way you like to make different V shapes and other kinds of shapes. So there's some that have been lined up like chevrons, some like X's, some in diamonds. It's really cute. And let's see if we can get some more details here. So each square uses 60 yards of your main color and 20 yards of your contrast color. The tire blanket uses 16 7.5-inch squares that it looks like you are going to sew together in the end and then add a border, assuming that you want one, which is another 150 yards. And then they've got a whole page of tips and techniques to go with this pattern. So if you're familiar with tin can knits, they've got a lot of tutorials and things to help you with their patterns and with learning new knitting techniques and things like that. So the finished blanket, obviously your size is adjustable. You can knit as many squares as you want, but the sample blanket is 31.5 inches square when all is said and done. There are over 1,000 projects on Ravelry if you need some more inspiration other than what's already on the page. And people have really done some beautiful things with these. This is not like rocket science. It's just garter stitch squares knit on the bias and sewn together. But the cleverness of either, as I said, the main pattern is done with a small off-center stripe. They also have some squares that are done half and half one color, half the other, and you can put those together into a kind of Norwegian star shape that you might be familiar with from other knitting patterns. So overall, really cute, very portable, easy to put to take your squares with you. Sewing them all together at the end is probably not super fun, but at the end you get a cool blanket, and that is what matters. So again, this is the Flyaway Blanket by Tin Can Knits, and it's available on Ravelry. All right, this one. Next up, we have the Modular Knit Quilt by Alexandra Tavel, who is the person who designed the crochet blanket that I am currently working on. So this is kind of a log cabin blanket, but slightly different. So the baby blanket that I knit for my youngest son that took forever was a log cabin blanket. And eventually I just got bored with picking up garter stitch stripes and trying to work it out so that the colors were, no colors were right next to each other, and it took forever. So this one, you are knitting smaller squares in kind of that log cabin style, starting with a bias knit square that is 2 different colors, so half and half. And then from there, you are doing that log cabin thing where you're picking up on one side and then you're picking up on the next side until the square is XYZ size, and then you're going to sew your squares together. So this pattern is available on Ravelry. It is only $5 and it uses a bulky weight yarn, so that is going to work up pretty quickly. A free version of the pattern can be found on her blog, so if you want to kind of deal with scrolling through a blog, you can check that out for free. It also seems like Lion Brand sells kits for this blanket. Let's see, that might be an old link. No, you can buy kits for this blanket from the Lion Brand website as well. So the kit is about $100. It's $97.24. $97.86. If you know where $97.24 is from, you can leave a comment down below. So it includes all of the yarn for this. And let's see, it is using the Lion Brand Hue and Me yarn. I don't know anything about that yarn. I don't know really much about Lion Brand yarns at all, but it includes a really nice collection of these kind of neutral and blue colors that are the ones that she used in her sample. I don't like that brown in there. I would swap that out for something else. That's the only one I really don't like. And I usually like brown and blue together, but in this case, I think it needs to be a much darker brown. I am a fan of brown and blue, but it's not working for me in this pattern. Anyway, so for $97.86, you get 2 balls of each color. And that is a bulky weight yarn. Hue and Me is one of their best sellers. It's a bulky weight, 80% acrylic, 20% wool. I'm not big on acrylic yarn. We've been through this. But since this is a blanket, which is not something you are going to wear, I can see that working, especially if you want it as like a throw blanket. So you can get the kit from them, or you can just use, whatever bulky weight yarn you want. As I said, all garter stitch. You're gonna knit a bunch of these squares, seam them together in the end. They're busy enough to hold your interest, but you're going to be able to take these squares with you on the go. Although since you're using all that different colors of yarn, that's a little less portable, but you just bring enough with you for your particular square. So I really like this. I love that it is a bulky weight. It is knit on a US 13 needle. Normally that is not a size needle I'm going to want to work on. It's just too big, but for garter stitch, knit flat, that should be easy peasy. Plus this is going to knit up pretty quickly. And since it is making up bigger squares, you're going to have less seaming to do at the end. So again, this one is the Modular Knit Quilt by Alexander Tavel, $5 on Ravelry. All right, the next one, this is a modular blanket, which has its pros and its cons. This is the Travel Mode Baby Blanket by Suzanne Sommer. And it is a grand total of $6.73 on Ravelry. And she actually just published this about a year ago. So this is a modular blanket that is a mix of garter and stockinette, which I think gives it just a little bit of extra texture, makes it really look interesting. It uses one main color, 4 contrast colors, and 1 accent color. So it uses 6 colors total. Obviously, you can do whatever you want with that. It does have a kind of unique end look, but you could certainly play with that depending on what you like your stripes to look like. It has a seamless modular construction, knit and garter stitch with stockinette details and an I-cord finish. So the con about this is it starts small, but it gets bigger, and so it becomes less portable as you go. So it's not like the others where you're going to be seaming things together at the end. However, because you're just kind of constantly changing colors and changing, the direction you're knitting, and you're changing from garter and stockinette, I think it's going to be one of those projects that, again, is going to hold your attention, but not become overwhelming. It is done in a worsted weight yarn. The yarn called for is Durham Natura Gilead, which is a lovely yarn. I think would make a beautiful blanket, but might get a little pricey. So you may want to look at, let's see what the total yardage is here. Does it say? Okay, so the total yardage is 1476 or 7 skeins. That's maybe about as much as you would need for a sweater, so that's not terrible. And again, I'm sure you can find some other more economical options. So the finished size is 39 by 42, and this is knit up on a US 8. Now, it says baby blanket, but you could use a heavier yarn or a larger needle to make it, a bigger, or it can just be a lap blanket. So Gilead has another yarn called, what's the name of that play? Cyrano.
Cyrano de Bourgeois what?
Cyrano de Bourgeois.
Cyrano that is a heavier Aran/bulky weight. So you could try that. It's going to have a lot of similar colors, the same kind of texture as the Gilead, and it's going to make you a bigger blanket if you want to try that. So again, this is the Travel Mode Baby Blanket by Suzanne Sommer, $6.73 on Ravelry. All right, this next one, I want to say I saw this on the Wool Needles Hands podcast, because Taylor did a podcast or a video a couple months ago about blankets. Which is one of the things that made me start thinking about knitting blankets, and whether I could actually find any knitting patterns that I might actually finish. So this is the Knitter's Choice Striped Blanket. This is a pattern from Purl Soho. The designer, I don't want to mispronounce her name, so I'm just going to put it here. I don't want to mispronounce it. But the pattern is available from Purl Soho. It has 2 different sizes, and it is knit in an Aran weight yarn. So of course, obviously it uses a Purl Soho yarn, Purl Soho Yonder. I have never used any yarn from Purl Soho. This sounds beautiful. It is a 50-50 wool alpaca, but at 140 yards per skein, it looks like you need 19 skeins of this, and I don't think it's cheap because I think I looked it up. They have kits, but this is not a cheap yarn. So again, you're looking for something a little more economical, you can find another Aran weight yarn for this, but it is really cute. So again, this is garter stitch stripes that you are going to work up into 4 squares and then seam together in whatever layout you want. And depending on how you rotate your finished squares, you're going to get different shapes. You could get diamonds, you could get chevrons, you could get X's, and you are just knitting these pretty basic garter stitch squares on the bias. So again, this is, it looks like you're finishing up with 4 squares that you seam together. So your seaming at the end is not going to be too labor intensive, only 4 squares to seam together. There is no border on this. Presumably you could add one, but if you make sure you have really nice selvages, you won't need to do that actually. And it just ends up looking really cute. I would love to do this in their particular yarn, but the price point is quite high. So maybe look for some other opportunities. They also have some really nice color palettes that they have put together for this. The pattern itself is free. You can just go on their website and get it. And I mean, it's bias knit squares with stripes. It's not, again, this is not kind of rocket science, but just seeing how they have done the layouts and the stitch counts and everything for you is nice to have. Finished dimensions of each square is 14 by 14, and so your final blanket is, nope, just kidding. The finished dimensions of each square is 25 by 25 for the actual throw size blanket, with a finished size of 51 by 51. There's also a baby blanket version if you prefer that, which is obviously smaller. And the gauge is 16 stitches per inch. A blanket, you want to check because you want your squares to come out square, but it doesn't have to be, super precise. Blocking, especially in a garter stitch, can make up for a lot of discrepancies in that area. So again, this is the Knitter's Choice Striped Blanket, available from Purl Soho. All right, and then this one is also from Purl Soho, and this is the last modular blanket I'm going to show you. This is the Windy Day blanket, and this was designed by Purl Soho themselves. There's no designer name on it for me to butcher. And this uses a worsted weight yarn, which is their linen quill, which is a wool, alpaca, and linen blend. Oh, no, it says, we no longer offer linen quill worsted, but choose from one of our other worsted weight yarns. So this uses quite a lot of yarn. It uses the main color. It uses 2,132 yards, and then 100 to 150 yards of each of the contrast colors, B, C, and D. We're not knitting squares this time. We are knitting triangles. It says, using our favorite no-sew technique, you knit one triangle, rotate, and join stitches for the next. So this is really going to keep you engaged as you are working. So it looks like we are knitting 4 triangles into a circle. Wow. It looks like we are knitting 4 triangles into a square and then seaming squares together. They've got some tutorials here to help you figure out, how you're picking up your stitches, how you're changing your colors, how you are knitting your triangles, because picking up stitches in garter stitch can be tricky. You are knitting your triangles into 14 by 14 inch squares. And then your blanket, if you were doing the throw, is going to take 12 squares. This is a little bit more involved than the ones that are just bias knit squares, but this is definitely going to hold your interest. It's still going to be portable because you are just making squares ultimately, not a whole blanket all at once. And you're going to be able to, as I said, apparently that yarn is no longer available, although it's still listed here. But there's lots of worsted weight yarn in the world, so you're going to have lots of options for this. It does, you know, use like one main color and then just some contrast color for different pops. You know, but you could plan out your colors however you like here and really play around. And probably, you know, if you had a fair bit of just a main color in your stash, or just bought, you know, a main color of the yarn, then you could fill in these pops of color from what's already in your stash, your leftovers, and things like that. So again, the pattern itself is free, uses a worsted weight yarn, and you can grab it from Pearl Soho, Windy Day Blanket. All right, and then this last pattern, as I said, it just looks so cute that it does use a bulky yarn. This is the Moonstone Plaid Blanket. This is again by Alexandra Tavel or whatever the case may be, 2 of Wands. And it again uses the Lion Brand Hue and Me yarn, which is a bulky weight. And basically what you are going to do here is knit a whole bunch of garter stitch stripes. And then you are going to weave contrast colors through to make this plaid. So that's a lot of garter stitch. That's a lot of stripes, but so it says the Moonstone Plaid Blanket transforms basic stripes into dramatic plaid with a simple weaving technique. Again, you can buy a kit from this from Lion Brand. The pattern itself is available for free on her blog. If you don't feel like you need the PDF version. But if you do want the PDF, it's only $4.50. So this uses about 2,000 yards of yarn. And I'm going to read more about this special weaving technique. So I really like the kind of neutrals that she picked for her sample here. You are using 4 colors. So you can really kind of, you know, once you've got your color palette set, you can play around a little bit. You're probably going to want some combination of light and dark colors. But really, we're really going to get a chance to play with color here. You could make it something totally chaotic, but I like, you know, the way that she's kept this in sort of a neutral color palette. So it's 6 skeins of the main color and then 3 skeins of each of the contrast color, and a US 15 needle. Yeah, so basically, again, you are just knitting stripes in garter stitch, and then you're going to do this weaving at the end, which sounds really scary, but it just looks fantastic. It looks really cute. It looks like when you're weaving your contrast colors, you are holding the strands double to get this effect. And then you are using the long strands, I guess, from the weaving to create kind of a tassel or fringe on the end. So that's awesome. So am I ever going to actually knit this? I don't know. Probably not. It's so much garter stitch. It's not portable. But who knows? Who knows? Moonstone Plaid Blanket. Probably not going to happen, but you never know. All right, thank you so much for joining me to check out these blanket patterns. If you have a go-to blanket pattern that you love to knit and you think fits the description here of something that is mostly portable, that is knitting up quickly, that is a perfect balance of ease and interest, leave a comment and let me know what it is, because I am on the hunt for blanket patterns that I might actually finish. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you will give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for a lot of great knitting and knitting related videos, new videos every Saturday. If you want to support the work of the channel and more free videos, check out the join button below and find out what that's all about. It is greatly appreciated. If you are looking for me on social media, you can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Made of Marijuana, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye.
Take us to New York, huh?
It's still $97.24 though.